But it all started with me just kind of being interested in real estate investing and finding out what I liked about real estate. That's the cool thing about real estate is you can do self-storage, you can do RV parks, you can do syndications, all these things, but you just need to figure out what is best for you. And in my book, in my case, I had a hotel management degree, so I knew about hospitality, and I liked being creative, and that's where I knew I wanted to figure out. And naturally, the best landing spot for me there was short-term rentals.
I'm fixing a home right now. It's going to be like a quick 3-month project, and I'm still doing the rough inspections.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah, I was just saying, I don't think there's ever been a timeline that's been hit in real estate. Those are the two things I've learned: is no project goes on budget and no project goes on time.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Bigger Life Podcast. Today, I got another awesome guest out of Houston, Texas, Garrett. Garrett is Bigger Pockets expert on short-term rentals, and happy to have him on my channel. Hey, Garrett, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm excited to get on and chat all things real estate and short-term rentals specifically. So thanks for having me on.
Oh man, I love it. I love talking about short-term rental. I love talking about real estate. So I think we have a lot in common.
Yeah, I agree.
Interesting discussion here.
Yeah, I agree.
So before you got into short-term rentals, how did you even find it, or what were you doing before?
So I randomly went to school for hotel management. Actually, I went to school at the University of Houston, and there's a school there called the Hilton College. I went into Conrad Hilton graduated from University of Houston, so he started his own hospitality college there. I went into business school at U of H, and I was like, this is not exactly what I'm looking for. I was in the restaurant industry. I was a waiter, bartender, things like that. So I was like, oh, let me give the hospitality side a try. I went through the school, graduated, learned a ton of things, and then as my life progressed, I was in music, I was trying other odd things, and I became a real estate agent. And my mom was telling me, hey, you should try this out, and I started kind of going, and I never really realized how I could put my hotel management degree to actual use in the real estate agent side. But as I went along, I heard about Bigger Pockets. It was my first year in. I had no idea about real estate investing. They don't teach you any of this in real estate agent school. I started looking into the investing side. Heard about Bigger Pockets, and I was like, okay, wow, like there's actually some methods that like I maybe can make as much money as some of these people fixing and flipping houses and all this. So as most people have within real estate, I started trying my hand at different things. I was wholesaling. I was fixing and flipping. I was doing buy and holds, all that, and nothing. Nothing really stuck. I had a couple wins, I had a couple big losses, and I was like, all right, like, should I just give up on the investing side? Like, maybe this isn't for me. And around 2019, I was working with a seller. We were long term. He had 3 condos in downtown Houston before. This is back when you could put an air mattress in Airbnb and make a bunch of money. And he was ready to sell them. We had been doing long term rentals, and I was like, okay, I'd heard about this short term rental thing. I asked him, I was like, hey, would you sell those condos to me at a discounted price, and we work it out, and then like let me take them over and I can maybe short term rent them on Airbnb. I started that. It went pretty well. Then COVID hit, as most people dealt with the same thing, and I was like, all right, well, now all the big institutional money is coming buying up all the same type of little condos I have, and it's just a race to the bottom in price. And that's when I realized that I needed to probably pivot to something that had a little more longevity in the short-term rental space. I love being creative. And that's when I came to the unique stays, the glamping, land hacking, like kind of what I do more now. And that's kind of just how I ended up where I'm at. But it all started with me just kind of being interested in real estate investing and finding out what I liked about real estate. Like that's the cool thing about real estate is you can do self-storage, you can do RV parks, you can do syndications, all these things, but you just need to figure out what is best for you. And in my book, in my case, I had a hotel management degree, so I knew about hospitality, and I liked being creative, and that's where I knew I wanted to figure out. And naturally, the best landing spot for me there was short-term rentals.
Absolutely. As you said it right, in real estate, you can start from whatever direction you want to go. But you just have to find your passion, what works best for you, and what makes a little bit more sense to you. What do you feel comfortable with, including taking risk? What kind of connections you have? What can you learn fast, right?
Yep.
And what kind of money you have to invest into it.
Yep.
And end of the day, it all boils down to the right investment, the right profit, and taking the risk. I mean,
Yep.
not all investments go profitable. There are risks involved. So yeah, but doing that analysis helps mitigate those risks.
Yeah, and I learned that too through all mine. Like I had one really big flip that was a huge win, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna crush it with fix and flips. And then my next fix and flip, we got burned. We lost probably $10,000 or $15,000 because of some things that we did wrong. But what's cool about it is I learned from that and just kept pivoting and making the direction I wanted to in real estate.
I'm fixing a home right now, and I thought it's going to be like a quick 3 month project, and I'm still doing the rough inspections.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about
Yeah, I was
it.
gonna say I don't think there's ever been a timeline that's been hit in real estate. Those are the two things I've learned: is no project goes on budget and no project goes on time. So just
Yeah,
pulling
after
up
I'm done
buckets.
with this renovation, I was talking to my wife. I'm like, you know what? We're done with the renovation. I'm
Fair
going to
enough.
try maybe new builds
Yeah, fair enough.
or acquire properties that just needs minor touch-ups.
Yep.
Because from an Airbnb standpoint, we look at it from a different perspective,
Yep.
right? But no major renovations, no adding a bedroom, no adding a bathroom.
I could get on that train with you for sure.
I know. So, what's your portfolio looking like right now?
I have 10 properties that I own, seven of them, and then manage three others between different places. I co-host for people is what they, glorified word Airbnb is called it now, but basically short-term rental property management. So that's about where I'm at now. And then I'm trying to figure out my next development into where I want to go. Cause now, the cool thing about real estate is there's so many options. And now I'm kind of leaning into, should I do an RV park or a self storage side or something like that too? So kind of figuring out what my next pivot is to keep diversifying, but also, stay within my niche that I kind of understand a little bit already.
Yeah, there comes a time when you're doing stuff, and as you rightly said, sometimes even questioning myself: should I continue to reinvest more into STR side or pivot somewhere else? And that constant churning of the thought process actually is helpful because it helps you either stay focused or get into the new direction.
Yep, absolutely. I'm always constantly trying to figure out how I can either, enhance the business I have with economy of scale, or is it one of those things where, don't put all your eggs into one basket? But that answer only comes to you through, trial and error and your thought process, like you're kind of saying, like that's how you really get the gears turning and figure out what's best for what you want out of your life.
So 10 properties. So I believe you mentioned you are more into glamping side of the business, right? Which is unique. STRs. It's I do STRs more like city based, like your regular home in the city. Where my risk profile is basically, hey, I look at it from a house standpoint. First of all, does this investment make sense? Then I look at it from a long term rental standpoint. What if I was to rent it from a long-term rental standpoint? Would it hold the value that I'm looking for, just from purely from a long-term rental standpoint? And then I look at it from the angle of, what if I rent it from the STR standpoint and I do the extra work? Would I get anything extra? Because sometimes when I'm analyzing the properties, it's actually better to just have it as LTR than doing STR. Like I was looking at property in Texas, near Austin, where the Samsung semiconductor industry is coming up. I looked at it. The rental was supposed to produce, the long term rental was supposed to bring in like $2,000, $24,000 per annum for that property. But short term rental would only have brought like 28, 29, $30,000. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh man,
that's a no brainer.
yeah,
I
that's a no brainer. So I'm
yeah.
not going to do it. So for me, if the property only checks both the boxes, then I acquire it.
Yep.
But you are into very, very different segment.
Yep.
So let's talk about that segment.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I agree with your thought process too. Like, teaching the short term rental education side at bigger pockets. That's that's the beauty of short term rentals though, is there's so many ways you can benefit your lifestyle. So if you're interested in more of down, cities and in that approach that you're kind of taking, you're analyzing it in the exact kind of way that you should. Like, how will it do as a short term rental? How will it do as a long term rental? If I need to pivot, if regulations come in and I can't do a short term rental anymore, will it be okay as a long term rental? Because in the end, investing in real estate, however you do it, I believe is kind of one of the biggest paths, to wealth. And so that's kind of what I took with my glamping side. I kind of viewed how I wanted to go because I really like the creative side. I really like the nature side. I kind of viewed mine as, how can I get into it as a almost a residential play, but in the end turn it into a commercial real estate play. So what I did, my very first property with glamping is I did what's called land hacking. Um, it's essentially kind of like house hacking, but where you get land and you split it up and start dividing between tiny homes. I bought a house. This was in 2021. Yeah, 2021 when I bought it. Uh, I bought a house. It had 10 acres on it. It was an hour away from Houston. So I need to backtrack a little bit because the reason I knew, like, people are always like, oh, maybe I can just buy land and wherever. And it's cheap and it's going to do well and I'll build some cool stuff. But why I knew that this one was going to work is because I have a rule called the 60-30-10 rule. And when I didn't even know what this rule was when I did it, it just made sense in my head. It was you need to be 60 minutes from a major metro city. So if you're not near any city with more than 500,000 people, your chance of people coming out to that area diminish greatly, unless you're in like a national park in somewhere or something like that. But that goes into my 30 minutes part. The 30 minutes is you need to be 30 minutes from a national, state, or a regional attraction. And then the 10 minutes is 10 minutes from a gas station or, a Dollar General or some type of civilization. And so what that allows you, if you followed that rule, is not only do you have a steady stream of people that can drive to your location at any point, you also have another steady stream of people that are coming in to visit that attraction that is near you. I found my house that I'm talking about. It had 10 acres. It was near Lake Livingston, which is the second largest lake in Texas. I grew up going there with my dad, just like fishing and stuff when I was younger. It was 45 minutes away from Houston. And then it was also near a national forest. There's only a couple of those in Texas. And so I was like, okay, there's some attractions here. I'm near a little town, so I can find cleaners, I can find handy people, I can get supplies if I needed. That's why the 10-minute rule is essential because if you're 50 minutes out from any civilization, your operations are going to be almost impossible to run. But so I got the house. I lived in it and this is the key to land hacking, I personally think. And this is why all real estate's going to take some sacrifice there. What the sacrifice is depends. For this, I had to live in that house for a year because it was an owner occupied loan, but I only had to put 5% down on it. And this was also when interest rates were 3%, so I got a screaming deal on that. So I bought the house. The mortgage people they're way more willing to lend on land when you have a house on the property because it's a tangible asset with utilities and all these things there. When people buy raw land, they don't realize how much it costs to build utilities, build roads. Like these things are astronomical, like astronomical. And if you don't have a hedge fund behind you, you're probably not going to have the cash to do that. So if you do the land hacking method, you'll have a house already on the property, so you'll be a lot easier to get a mortgage. You also will have a lot of the utilities near the property. You already know that. You already have roads that went in. You already have some electric. You might have to put in a water well or septic in some part of the land, just depending. But electric and road work are huge to have. So with that 5% loan, I got to, instead of putting down a typical 20, 25%, 30% down payment for an investor loan, I saved all that money, built my first cabin with the cash I had, then started renting it on Airbnb. And then we built a Geodome, which is basically a glorified tent structure with like steel and all these things. But I bought it from a company called Pacific Domes that's, pretty known within the United States. And they have architecture plans actually for their geodomes that are like stamped by an engineer. That's one thing about, you don't want to buy like these glamping structures for really cheap off of Alibaba or some Amazon or some random site, because most of the time they're cheap for a reason. They're built with cheaper materials, and then two, you're probably not going to be able to get that as permitted easily in your county. And I can go into permits and all that for hours, about like how to make sure you can actually get them and how to avoid that. But I made sure I could get permitted for this process too. I forgot to mention that before I bought the place. I was calling the county. Most of these little counties have 2 or 3 people that work in their permitting department. So calling around and just telling them and being honest and telling them what you want to do, you're going to have a pretty good idea if it's something that's going to be feasible. But I saved that money, built my first Geodome. We built it for about $100,000 with all the bells and whistles, hot tubs. We had to put a water well out there. We had to put electric pole. a septic system. But the septic system, we knew we were going to build other tiny homes. So we made sure we paid more up front to that it could support the other tiny homes we built. Now we're up to 4 tiny homes on this piece of land. And and all that utility work I put into every time I built a new home, it got cheaper because I already had a lot of these utilities in area. And so, and also the economies of scale. Like my operations are cheaper every time I build a new home now. My marketing gets cheaper because it's not like I'm spending so much extra to run the same type of operation. It's all on one piece of land. It's super easy to run it like a business. And then once you have, now I have multiple levers of the revenue of the business coming in. I bought the property for $550,000, but now based on all the tiny homes I built, all the infrastructure I put in, all the cash flow that we're getting for net operating income, which is about $150,000 a year. Now it's probably worth about 1.5 million if I was to sell it as a business, because I would sell it as commercial real estate now, because I've kind of converted it to that. So long-winded story about it is I went in as a residential play, but the whole time I had the vision of building out something that I knew I could exit as a commercial real estate play later on, which they value everything based off of the assets that are attached and how much money the business actually makes, as opposed to residential real estate, which all they care about is what the comps are saying in the nearby. And it's hard to make your property be worth more if other properties in the area aren't appreciating a lot. But because I went the commercial real estate route now I pretty much can pull the levers of how much my business and assets can actually be worth in the glamping area.
Absolutely. Commercial play is very different than the residential play. The residential, you can only foresee appreciation in the sense of, okay, let's just do some remodeling, right? And that's about it. But on the commercial side, it's not the remodeling aspect of it, but it's more about what's the year cap rate at what you are going to sell it to. So if your cap rate, if you're selling it for 8%, and by the way, the lower the cap rate, the higher your margin is. So if you sell it 10% cap rate versus 8% cap rate, you're going to get like astronomical differential when you're selling it. Now, how much money did you put into these domes? So if you bought the home for 550, how much does each dome cost to purchase it? And then how much does it really cost to put it including utilities and all that other stuff?
So it depends. And, before I opened my place, I travel, and this is a big piece of advice I always have for people that are curious about this, is go to other glamping sites and stay there, because there's really two or three models you can go into. You can go the more high end, less structures, more private, and charge higher rates for those type of structures. Or you can go like how some other people have, and they put 20 or 30 geodomes or structures right by each other on one piece of land. Not as many private amenities, but also the cost is less for people to come in, and you have a bigger economy of scale there. I went and stayed at a few places, and I personally found that I liked the more private ones, a little more high end. Like again, I only have 4 tiny homes now on my property, as opposed to I could have done 15 or 20 if I wanted to, but it would have brought down the average daily rate that we can get dramatically. So I spent each dome, you can probably get them shipped, delivered, super high quality domes for between $15,000 to $20,000. But it's really the extras that you put in that really matter. Like we put a hot tub in, we put a sauna in, like all the bells and whistles that we were able to do. We spent about $100,000 on this geodome to finish it out. We spent like $10,000 on the bathroom, which going back, I probably would have toned it down just a little bit. But I wanted to really build the experience out, and then the Geodome launched, and our ADR is probably around 386, I think, and we're about 86% occupied on our Geodome alone. But we immediately went and got our next structure, which is it's a company called Ood. They're from Estonia, but they just came to the U.S. They make mirror houses, where it's just these crazy, super prefab homes that are about 221 square feet, that have these really cool three-way or two-way mirrors that people, they reflect on the outside, but people can't see on them during the day. And they do really well on social media. Like, they're super easy to market. I actually partnered with that company. They had just came to Houston. I tell people all the time, you need to be creative sometimes. Like, I don't have a bunch of money behind me. I don't have any investors behind me. It's all been myself and my mom that have kind of bootstrapped everything. But I got creative with it. So I reached out to the Oud company and I was like, hey, I know y'all are trying to get it more into the US. I already have a glamping site that I've been building, put a lot of infrastructure into. Would y'all want to partner? Give me a house basically, and I give y'all revenue shares off of it. And they were crazy enough to say yes, and it's their most profitable house. They do a lot of these partnerships in Europe, but my house is the most profitable one they have in the world because I understood, we're in a massive market, Texas, we're near, Houston, Austin, Dallas, but I also understood marketing, and I also had like operations and a team kind of in place, and like they understood that. So I spent about $50,000 to build out the infrastructure for that new mirror house site. They provided the house for free, but I give them a revenue share each month. But that house, the first year, we brought in $115,000 in gross revenue from a house that's 221 square feet, and it's in the middle. People say it's in the middle of nowhere, but it just comes from showing that people are craving these types of really unique structures. And then I built up. I have two more mirror houses now. We put in Austin with a similar model where they partnered with me. I didn't have to buy the house, but I provided the infrastructure and the team. I also have another. I have a couple other properties that we either you can finance some of these homes. As another one that I just did is it's called a park model, which is a tiny house on wheels, and they keep it on a trailer. And you can finance those really, really easily because they can be financed like an RV or a car. And so, if you're struggling, one barrier to entry that we all have is like a lack of cash, right? Like that's one of the hardest things in this industry. And so if you can figure out creative ways to keep adding to your infrastructure as you go and keep increasing your net operating income, like that's the biggest end goal with this for me, and how I was able to keep just, bringing down my expenses but upping my infrastructure and my income that's coming in. So you don't always, your first one, you're probably going to have to put some cash up. Like I don't sugarcoat that with people. It's very hard to get into these for cheap. You can go the really cheap route where you put up like a generic, tent for $1,000, put a couple solar panels, and I've seen somebody put a porta potty by it, like things like that. You can do it, but you're probably going to make about $50 a day. You're going to be dealing with the same amount of stress of the guest. Like, it's all kind of dependent of what you want to do. So it's one of those tougher things to like tell people what works best for them. But the best advice is go stay at some glamping sites and see what you like and see what you hate, and try to pivot off of that.
You said it right. I mean, that stress about dealing the customer or meeting their expectations. Now, whether they're paying you $10 a night or they are paying you $10,000 a night, right? So your customer service and it is exactly the same. So we all learn from our mistakes. So what I did, one of the homes at my very first renovation when I was doing, I said, okay, you know what? This home has an exterior door entry, like on the front and on the back side. So I'm gonna get creative here, right? So I'll just rent out the master bedroom by itself when I have like a low season or something. So I'll rent that bedroom out like for $50,
Yeah.
right? And somebody will stay. Now, people did stay. Now, I was splitting that home. Like, I got the master bedroom, like a hotel style, and then I got the two bedrooms, on the other side. But man, it was a nightmare. And then I'm an umpire, fielding between this noise issue, this and that. Ultimately, now I will let a night go away. If it's unoccupied, it's unoccupied, right? That's what it is. But I would rather rent the full home rather than doing the splits
Yeah.
because it's more work. It's not worth everything else that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. If you're doing something to the best of your potential, now everybody has a different potential.
Yeah.
Try to see how you can maximize the ADR. ADR stands for average daily rate. So try to bring in the maximum rate because that low rate is not going to help.
You're gonna do this. You're gonna do the same amount of work. That's the thing that
Yeah.
people. The only way that I've seen me personally, the only way I've seen the lower rate thing work is when you have 20 or 30 or 40 tents on a property, and you can have a manager on site, and like all these like that's a real business. The only
Kind of like apartment community, right? So
yes, exactly,
having
very
single family
similar.
home versus like having apartment and then they have a maintenance person on site.
Yep,
It's a different story. But when you're dealing with these small structures where you cannot afford to hire a manager
yep,
or a maintenance person, like everybody is basically a contractor,
yep,
then you don't have that economies of scale yet.
yep. And you're going to be stuck doing it.
So how much does each of, so I know Mirror Home, you mentioned that's producing what, 150K,
115. Yep,
115
yep,
per just one
yep. For
structure.
just one. Yep.
And how about your other geodomes
Uh,
individually?
so my Geodome probably is about 90K revenue. A new tiny house we have, it's called we call it the Zen Den. It's going to do about 95K gross. The other two mirror homes that I have, they're probably going to be about 90K gross. They're in a little different part of Austin. We actually partnered with a state park to bring those there, and so it's a little bit. It's not as it's a great example of why people will pay more for certain things. We can't get as high of an ADR on our new mirror houses as my main one that's on my private land because it's in a public park. It doesn't have as many private amenities. It's a little different. We still get like about 298 ADR on those, but my mirror house that has private amenities has a sauna, has an outdoor bath, shower, all these private things. Our ADR on that's like 478 or something around those. So it's a good example right there of what exactly why amenities and the private feel of these type of cabins is huge. But we also we have the economies of scale now to where I have a team and all these things that help me operate these. So me adding on a few mirror houses in a public park or state park isn't wasn't as big of a deal to me because I knew if we took a little less, it's okay because we just need more revenue coming in anyways because we have a team now that we can support this and we need to just bring in more. Our average on our tiny homes, I would just say you're probably going to, depending on your area, every area is completely different. Check, Air DNA, Price Labs, all those things to see what the data is in that particular area. But you can probably guess between 75 to 95K gross revenue per unit if they're a little more private, they have a hot tub, and you can understand marketing and things like that too. That'd be my guess for a general area from what I'm seeing kind of across the states.
So the 7 properties that you own, and you're managing 3 or co-hosting 3. So
Mm-hmm.
for the 7 properties that you own, what's the total revenue that you're producing?
So the 7 I own, we're probably close to 600 for the year gross revenue. I always try to make that obvious for people. And then my co-hosting properties, obviously I do 20% on those, but each one of those is probably grossing between 90 and 110. I'm very picky on my co-hosting properties because I know they have to, like, I only take on things that I know are going to do well. I won't take on like Joe Schmo's house in a random neighborhood that has old furniture and nothing about it because that's just
Yeah, yeah.
it's just this is no reason for my team to be
It has
involved
to
with that.
blend with what you're doing. Like, for
Yeah.
example, I'm doing in the city. For me to take on glamping is gonna be a totally different thing.
Yeah,
Now,
fair enough.
can I pivot? Yes.
Yeah.
But I would rather take somebody who's in city in close proximity to where my properties are
Yep.
because I have teams who
Exactly.
can help clean, who can fix, and so it just helps with the economies of scale.
100%.
And if you are doing glamping, I believe even those 3 STRs are a little bit of like that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. They're all near my glamping sites too, the STRs
yeah,
I run. So like I only do it in area. I have two specific markets that I only go into because I built out teams. I trust people there. I know like the same reason, like people, I've never understood how, everybody could, somebody could probably tell me different, but I've always thought one of the hardest things would be having, one property in like 15 different markets. That sounds like a doozy to me, unless you have like $1 million property in each one that is making the revenue that can support these things. That sounds like a nightmare to me having one house in so many different
when you say 10
markets.
properties, do you mean like all of these units you count it as a property, like 4 different glamps or 10 different properties having multiple structure?
Yeah, I consider like each house its own property. Each, so
Okay. Each house. Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk about marketing, right? So Airbnb, of course, is one of the main channels. So, what's your revenue percentage or revenue share from Airbnb versus everything else?
I will say if there's one thing that I will toot my horn about when it comes to this is I am really, really good at marketing. I don't know what it is. It's something I've always been good at, even in my past career before I really was doing real estate. So we do 75% direct bookings. Most of those come through social media. We do maybe 20% Airbnb, and then the other 5% is kind of shuffled between Verbo, Booking.com, and some of those. But we do a ton of direct bookings. One, because we have really unique stays, and they're very easy to market on Instagram and social media. And then two, like we know how valuable that is. That I personally believe that Instagram and then Google Vacation Rentals are like the new Airbnb. Like people are going on Airbnb and searching, but most people are their Google Vacation Rentals is going to be huge soon. People are not on it; they are way behind. I promise you that is going to be something major. And then the cool thing about Instagram is when people are scrolling, and like you're making cool content, and they go to your direct booking site from your social media, you're not competing with 40 or 50 other Airbnbs that are out there. They are on your page looking at your products, and you're be able to control the customer experience from beginning to end. And when they go on Airbnb, they're looking at prices. They're comparing all these other places, near you, and like, ooh, this one might be better than this one. It's not the case when they're on your direct booking site. So we went full fledged into the marketing of social media, and I can touch on that for hours as well too. But I spend a good amount of money on marketing because right now I'm building up my brand, but at the same time, I realize how valuable it is for the future of a real brand. If you just have one or two properties and you're kind of just throwing them up to have as supplemental income, you have a couple long-term rentals, a couple short-term rentals or something, that's totally awesome. Airbnb, Verbo, those are great places to like be on and rely on their eyeballs that they get. But if you're looking to kind of scale and build your brand or business in this kind of thing, then without a doubt, you really need to understand the social media. When I say social media, I really mean Instagram and TikTok, for a lack of better words. Really need to understand how you can reach those customers on there, because that is going to be, game changing for your business.
100% true. We started with the Airbnb world, and then, of course, we started sending out our inventory to all the other channels or OTAs as they are called in the industry. We got a direct booking website, but you have to build your own brand because working with all these platforms is increasingly becoming more and more difficult, and managing the guest expectations on those channels is becoming more and more difficult. And how Airbnb or these different channels kind of respond back was sometimes nonsensical and not even understanding the real problem, because I don't know if they got AI or they just got some subpar customer service,
No.
but it's really, really hard to get real level of support.
Yeah.
And I hear these stories where, hey, somebody stays for X amount of time and then they just basically get a refund.
Yep.
And there is no way for you to really appeal it.
Yeah.
And who are you appealing it to?
Nobody,
to the same
no.
person who denied it.
it's from my experience. I used to, you made up some great points, because I've been on Airbnb, 6 or 7 years now. I remember when it was actually I don't want to say easy, but it was definitely easier to get a review removed if it was something that just didn't make any sense. Like why, because you might be, even like I had a super host, like account manager and all these things. They pretty much gone away with most of that. Pretty much every time you submit a AI or a review, it's going to be only AI. You don't have any direct support. There's so many chargebacks, and even pretty soon, Airbnb is going to put the Airbnb host on the hook for the chargeback. So like not only are we not the merchant of record, and when I say merchant of record, like the one collecting the money and being able to put our processes in place that protect us from chargebacks and all refunds and things, Airbnb is going to be the merchant of record, let the chargeback come through, and then you have no recourse, because it's not like you don't know who the guest is, like you can't reach out to their credit card company, all these things, because you're not the merchant of record. And so what I found with the direct booking side of why I am so adamant about this for people going forward is, there's a ton of softwares and processes that will protect you. You will see the red flags before they come. I've only had one chargeback in the history of all my direct bookings. I've done thousands of direct bookings. I've had one chargeback, and I learned from that how to stop them even more. But the other thing that you touched on really well that I think is a big deal too is Airbnb guests are like, there's like an entitlement to it now. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, they're just where their brain works of like how, what they think an Airbnb should be and what a 5-star review is and all this. It's totally different on our direct booking side. They're less price sensitive. Like, on your own Airbnb, they're always asking for a discount. They're comparing prices, all these things. On our direct booking site, we actually charge a little more. I hope nobody's listening to this that is thinking about booking. We actually charge a little more than we do on Airbnb because the guest is less price sensitive, we have found. It's cheaper because they don't have to pay a ridiculous Airbnb service fee when they're not servicing anything for us. But that is the really cool things about direct booking. But everybody screams direct bookings. It's not easy to like get the traction there. Like, I don't want to lie to people and say, oh, set up a direct booking site tomorrow. You'll be 75% by the time the weekend comes. It's not that case. It took me 2.5 years to build up 75% direct bookings with a massive social media push. So if you start your direct booking site and you get 5% direct bookings in a few months, that's a great step forward because each month, just try to keep increasing that. You start collecting emails, you can send out an email newsletter. The other really big key for getting direct bookings that people overlook a little bit or don't want to spend the money on, which I think if you don't know these, if you're not a technical website person, then I highly recommend get your organic search engine optimization, the SEO of it, as high as possible for wherever your target is. So you, for example, in Atlanta, like whatever your demographic is, and I don't know your exact homes, but say you are a family home in this particular pocket of Atlanta. Your direct booking site should have blogs about what to do in that area. You should have on your direct booking site those exact keywords that you are wanting to target multiple times. There's a company called Hike SEO. There's a company called SE Ranking. All these types of things like that. You can run your website through these softwares. $50, $100, something like that, and they'll tell you like, hey, this is where your SEO and your website is not working. Add more of this, take out some of this, write a blog about this topic, like all these things. And then that's how when people go to Google and are searching XYZ, one reason I've been successful is because we are one of the top ranking places, if not the top, on Google for when you type in glamping in Texas. But I've had that mission from 3 years ago when I built this. My name is Cameron Ranch Glamping. I have glamping in my name. I have, like I wish at this point, I wish I would just call it Texas Glamping or something because it's like that is where the sauce is like if you pop up in Google very high for what that search term is you're looking for, Google is still the king and then the next one is going to be like getting into like Chat GPT AI and like making sure you're listed there when people type in, hey, where can I go glamping in Texas? I've been proactively making sure like we pop up in the Chat GPT results now. Like that is where the secret sauce is. You don't got to spend money. You spend money up front, but after that, it will be the wheel that kind of greases everything. You don't need to run, $1,000 paid ads and all like those are great. Like I do them, but the secret sauce is having really good social media that you're consistent with, and then really good SEO for your whatever your term is you're looking for. That's how you slowly build up your direct booking platform. And that's how each month you just add a couple percent to it. It's not a quick process, but you have to start to be great. You'll never hit that 75% direct booking if you don't actually start and get 1 or 2% direct bookings coming in. That's a win.
We need to bring you back on just direct bookings. I mean, this is a wealth of knowledge that you have. Personally, even I am kind of struggling. So when I first started, I started with the Airbnb. So it was 100% Airbnb. And then I had this push to reduce bookings from Airbnb, right? Diversify. So we launched direct booking. We launched everything else, like verbobooking.com, agoda.com, expedia.com, and many, many other channels. Man, I'm still at maybe 80%.
Yeah.
So bringing it down or flipping that 80% Airbnb to 80% or 75, 70%, or even half and half, 50% direct booking is a real challenge.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good. I mean, need to look into some of these things that you talked, and of
Yeah,
course, I need to bring you back for another session.
for sure. No,
just,
I'm always open talking
just
in
on direct
marketing.
bookings, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, no,
I feel like that's kind
absolutely.
of my secret sauce. That and then how to be, be as hospitality mindset forward as you can in this kind of space. Those are like the two things that I think people struggle with, and then two things I think I'm good at that I think that people could try to understand and learn, and it can improve their business dramatically too. So I'm always open to chat about it.
Great. So what's next for Garrett?
I think I'm going to keep, I definitely have diversify. I have a few long-term rentals. I'm always kind of looking in that space, like low hanging fruit, like low lift to kind of get them going. But I do think I kind of have caught the itch to go even further in the commercial real estate space. So even after we get off this podcast, I'm going to look at a few RV parks to see if there's something out there that I can add value to, and also bring in my glamping expertise to kind of expand that operation, and go in from there too. So that's kind of where I'm leaning. But the cool thing about real estate is I may change my mind in a few months and go to the self storage route or something like that too. So it's like it's kind of keeping me on my toes too. But I really do have like a big itch for the commercial real estate space, for where I'm seeing different things, writing on the wall for different things, going in the future for everywhere around me.
I don't blame you. Even I got that itch.
Fair enough.
Even though we are talking short-term rentals, I mean, last I think month or so, I got that itch.
Yeah, same here. Like I think it's a natural step in short-term rentals. Like I tell people all the time, especially at bigger pockets, like it's we're kind of known as buy and hold, long-term investing, like which I teach as well in the short-term side. But I tell people if they're interested in short-term rentals, the cool thing about short-term rentals is it's not only real estate, is you're also starting a business. And once you get into that, you might get the itch to go start buying businesses or create a business, or you might get the itch to just go more full real estate. But you get to see both sides to understand what you actually like. And so now I see that I like the business side. I see that I like the commercial real estate side, because I can add all my marketing skills and these levers I can pull to bring in more revenue, and that's just tougher on the residential side. So that's kind of where I've ended up. But that's the cool thing about real estate. Why I love it so much is, man, you really can just dive in and see what really makes you excited. Like what gets you out of bed every morning. Like that's what I want to figure out. That's what I want to learn, and I'll never stop wanting to learn that. And it takes time to figure that out. But that's the cool thing about it is you can't fail until you quit. So you just got to keep trying different things and see what works.
Yeah, keep trying, keep trying. So when Garrett is not working in real estate, what do you like? What are your hobbies?
Man, sadly, real estate definitely kind of dominates a lot of my thought process in life. Owning businesses is another thing. You're 24/7. But I I love animals. Like that's definitely like one of my big passions. So I have multiple animals I'm always taking care of. Me and my fiance, we like to go to work out, go to cooking, go to restaurants. Like we just like being out and about and exploring things. And then I love entertainment too. So sports to shows and things, we kind of dive in there. And I've recently got into Legos too. I don't know why. It's like a kind of a mind numbing thing for me. Like you could just build something, be creative, and it like kind of draws my brain away from thinking about real estate 24/7. So kind of been trying out some different things. So it's fun to always see what comes up next in my life.
Well, tell you what, you're building the next model for your next commercial.
Yeah, exactly.
It's,
So
it's
it feels
next
like
big
real
thing, right?
estate, but it's not as stressful. So I like it.
Plus, you can build it whatever way you want to
Yeah,
do,
and
right?
I'm not gonna have a cranky tenant in there either, so it's all good.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate it. There's a lot that you taught us in regards to the clamping, so we appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, no, likewise. I appreciate you having me on. Happy to come back and chop shop anytime.
Yeah, definitely. And to our viewers, thanks for joining another episode of Bigger Life Podcast. We'll be back next week with another interesting story. Thank you.